All right, here we go. Thanks so much for being here. In such really nice number of people. Thank you. My name is Dušan Vukčevič. I'm a 3D artist from Milici, Slovenia. I've been doing this for, well, like 20 years. I know you're thinking right now, it's like, how can it be? You look like you're 20. But it comes down to, the simple and stress-free life of a 3D artist. Anyway, enough with the dad jokes. I've been using Cinema 4D for a really long time, since version 11. That came out in 2008. And what I like to do is, what I basically do is all kinds of 3D animation simulations, architectural visualizations, and particle animations, basically pretty much everything, because I enjoy doing different stuff. And what I focus on, what I really like doing is personal projects. And those have gotten me a lot of online recognition, publications in magazines and books and so on, and awards. So I've been doing the thing that I really focus on is photorealism. This is something I'll be talking about today. So I really am fascinated by, I always have been, like somebody drew a realistic image, like traditional art. That's something very, like how can you recreate something so detailed in the world? So I tried to do that in CGI, and I have to say I'm still working on it, but one thing I realized, and usually don't do quotes, but this one really hits the mark, so I had to put it in there, because the more I started learning about photorealism in 3D, the more I realized this is like an endless thing. It just keeps branching out. You have to learn more and more things, and it never ends. In some way, it's good that it never ends, so you keep learning and keep getting better. But I think it also applies to everything you do in real life as well. Again, one thing, I'm very critical of my work, so it's a tough to talk about photorealism, because I always am very critical of my own work, and it's also, some people see renders very quickly, oh, that's a photo. But some people see it like it takes more effort to convince them, to trick them into thinking that it's real. And some people, I think most people, just know something is off, but they can't explain it. So that's something that we as artists are always on the lookout for, because we need to, for instance, I'm always aware of everything. I'm kind of getting obsessed with this. Every detail I see, everywhere I go, the scenes outside, the shadows, the details. I'm trying to think, how hard would that be to make in 3D? Always into this mindset, and doing this over and over and over in all the years, I think it helps you see what you're doing wrong. I'm guessing this way. But of course, it's not about photorealism. If you have a perfectly modeled chair, a perfect texture, it looks amazing, but the lighting is flat, and then you have a second picture, and it's not as good modeled, not as good textured, but amazing lighting. It's so wow, it looks great. Everybody's going to like the second one, and I'm one of those people as well. So it's never about just realism, it's about making it look really great. That is something I really try to focus on. So it's not a primary thing to focus on photorealism. And also I think if you have a good model and great shaders, that's it. That's the realism. The lighting is basically just the mood, the way you make the image look. But if you mess up with the model and shaders, you're going to have a hard time coming up with anything close to realism with lighting. So something to process over. And the lighting part is something I really enjoy more than modeling and shading. So I'm going to be opening up a couple of my projects and talk about them, open them up and stuff like that. Recently, this project of mine has been featured in 3 different Maxon demo reels. So first I want to play it for you, and then we're going to break it down a little bit and talk about more projects, and I'm going to show something new I'm working on. So let's get started. All right, so there's the video, and one other thing that I like to do is, I hope you will understand that the inspiration for it was I love collecting vinyl records, and this is something I also like to do, is in combination with realism and with lighting is also storytelling, which is non-surprisingly very difficult, but I try anyway. So what I'm going to do is going to start with the lighting, with a scene like this. What I usually do, like you have a model and then you texture it with some basic lighting, and then you start thinking about how you're going to light the scene. Usually I go about just finding different HDR images and just throwing them in and see what happens, what looks good. In this case, I really like this direct light coming in. You can see this is an HDR that is obscured with clouds, which adds additional details in the lighting. If it's just straight sun, it lacks those little things. They're very, very small details that you barely can see those. So I like this HDR, throw it in. Okay, I'm liking the turntable. It looks good, but the rest is very dark, but I don't care. I just don't care. I'm going to focus on that later. I like to take one step at a time. Similar to what photographers do. They put on a camera on a tripod, and they start making multiple pictures, moving lights around in the studio, and then they composite everything in post. I do that as well. But when I'm working on an animation, then it's basically like I want to do everything in one shot and render it out, so I don't have too much work in the post. So what I did here is I slammed an area light in the right corner, which makes no sense. Physically, I would have to open up the windows, doors, and have a skylight coming in to make it look realistic. But I believe once you know some rules, some basic rules about lighting, about how things work, you can break them. And I just, for small scene, slam a lot of area lights, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So rules are meant to be broken. So I'm looking at this. I need some details, some more details here, and I add a sunlight, and it adds small details to to the whole surface here, and it's actually not a no more microphone. Yeah, okay. It's actually not a sunlight, it's an aerial, it's a spotlight with a texture. So it adds this, this detail. Some people call this painting with light. You know, you're lacking details, you just add some details with the light inside. And what I like to do is also make it, use animated gobo texture, so it adds additional details when you're making an animation. When I'm working with tree animations and simulations, I use P-Tree. Very, very, very cool project. You can also do stuff like that. It's basically plug and play to do something like this. Very useful for projects like I'm working on. When it comes to materials, sometimes I go into ridiculous details, and sometimes just simple, high-quality textures work just fine. It's great, you know, really cool texture. What I like to do is, like in this case, I mixed the roughness of the wood material with dirt map, so it adds a little bit of imperfections in reflections, and also round corners, which means no surface should be sharp, which is real in real life. Actually, you don't have any perfectly sharp corners, so keep that in mind. Okay, next shot. Exterior shot here. Sometimes I'm wondering how should I create something. I'm always trying to look for inspiration, but sometimes it's just as easy as looking at my own office, which is Monstera plant and the glass. So that was it. I was walking into my office. So, there it is. Let's do this. I don't have to look much further than that. So the lighting for this scene, again, I like to start with a very flat, cool lighting, because I know I'm going to add sunlight. So cool and warm colors really blend together very nicely. So I just start with this simple scene, HDR, and I add a tree. Looks good, it's already animated, so that works. So I want to work on the reflection a little bit, so add an image behind. Add a sunlight, this time the real sunlight, and I want to frame this a little better. There's like a little room on the bottom corner on the right, so I add another tree there. And also, what I like to do is add trees in the background. You see my mouse now. So I like to add trees in the background so we have a little bit more motion also in the background. What I realized while working on exterior shots and looking at other artists' exterior shots, the one thing that gives away that it's not real is usually the glass. You can make everything great, but if the glass doesn't work, like it breaks the whole image. Like, no pun intended, it breaks the glass. So not only, I think the glass doesn't have to be complex. This is just a simple glass with a thin wall on a plane, but what actually is figuring out how to do a reflection. Like you get clients, like, imagine like, well, we have the mirror, take a picture of it so we can sell it. You're going to have a reflection, either you're yourself taking a picture or whatever. So glass and reflections are always tricky, and if you get that right, you're on a good path. Here's an image in the background, also adding a little bit of light, a bit of a green, because the sun hits the environment, it reflects a little bit of a green color into the image. So I like to do the incandescent light in Redshift to cast a little bit of a green color, and this is what it looks like. Very simple setup. The background image, the trees, and the sun casting through the shot. And like, I really focused on the reflections here in the background. And you can see when it loops, it jumps a little bit, right? I also like to do that often, or always. I add a vibrate tag on a camera because it feels a little bit better if camera is moving slightly. It makes it feel more realistic. You don't have to overdo it, just slightly. It makes a little bit of a difference, but small little details really matter. All right, the next shot. This one was featured on Maxon 1 reel. And shots like this tend to be very tricky. I'll tell you why, as soon as I get it to play. All right. There's a lot of similar objects in the scene, almost the same. So if you are not careful, you can get a very flat-looking image. What I did here is I added a lot of spotlights on different areas with different intensities, with different sizes, different colors. Also, if you look at the top floor, the foreground is a little darker, the background is brighter. You're making a visual depth. Left and right doing the same things, so every time you're making your lighting scenes like that, you have to think about not making it too flat, because everything, the color and the objects are not making the depth themselves. And also, when making animations, like here I used, again, the tree. The tree in the background, there's some motion here, and there's some motion here in the shadows as well. So trying to make it as much as dynamic as possible in the simple, kind of simple shot like that. So what I'm talking about here has to do a lot of photography, videography. I cannot stress enough how important it is to be good at photography, because it has so much to do with 3D design and everything. So I highly suggest that you just get a camera and start taking pictures, because it really, really, really helps in all areas of 3D, especially in lighting. I think like just walking around taking pictures and seeing what you're doing wrong with the camera and trying to fix that, that's going to convert into your 3D projects. And what I like to do is make a full 3D scenes, no background images or whatever. It's completely fully 3D. So then I have the liberty to explore different lighting setups, move lights around and explore. And especially these days with the fast graphic cards and Redshift being so fast, it's joy. It used to take very long to experiment when I was starting off, because it took a while to get the first image without interactive rendering. So now this is just one of my favorite things to do. Also, in my talks, I always talk about recreating images, photographs. You really learn a lot from that. You understand how it was composed, what camera was used, how the lighting works, materials. So recreating, I highly recommend that, because it's not too hard. You just have to work on it, but the end results and learning curve is really great. When it comes to composition, I've realized on many projects that I did everything right. Everything was looking good, but something was off. And I started moving my camera around, and I finally came to, okay, there it is, and finally find the frame that I was looking for. So composition can really change, really drastically change how you work. And I always, in Cinema 4D, I always use the helpers for the composition. Either it's golden ratio, golden section, whatever. But most of the time, I have the grid always on. So the rule of thirds, everything should be in place. Even whatever shot you're making on, and even if you take a picture, you have this grid, and it helps so much. At one point, you don't even have to have it, but I still do. I still do, and kind of visually represents everything that I like to do. And I always, when I create a scene, I try to look for different angles, different camera angles, interesting places where I could place camera to make it look better. Also, when I take pictures and when I watch movies and watch other photographs and everything, I like the depth of field. I like the bokeh. For me, when you watch a movie with me, that's a nightmare. So the first time I watch a movie, it's about the story and everything. Then if I like the movie, I go back and watch, and then I go and start pausing things. Usually that's on my laptop. Then I look at the compositions, I look at the colors, I look at the way that everything is framed, and I look at the bokeh, which I really like. I think about what camera, what lens was used, what shape was used. And I try to do that in Cinema 4D as well, use custom shapes for bokeh. Here's a different one. So, it's not a huge difference, but for me, something works, something doesn't. Most people won't notice this, but for me, these small details really matter. Also, like this one is really cool. No texture, you just go into camera settings and you have an aspect ratio. 1 is a perfect circle. If you go below 1, like in this case 0.8, it's stretched out, and you see this a lot in movies, stretched out lenses. The photographers, I've spoken to a lot of photographers. They always struggle to remove chromatic aberrations, some glows, some lens effects that really bother them. What we as artists like to do is the opposite. So we add those little effects so it looks more photographic, and those imperfections also add to realism. If you overdo this, it's going to look fake, but adding a little bit of small chromatic aberrations and stuff like that really helps overall. When it comes to post-production and colors and everything, I tend to do everything in 3D because, I don't know, I like the visual representation of what I'm doing at the time that I'm doing it. And sometimes I also do it post-production, but it's minor tweaking, not too much. And I use Magic Bullet Looks, which comes with Cinema 4D, which is really cool, amazing tool. What I sometimes do, I export 32-bit EXR out of Cinema 4D into Photoshop plugin called Area Effects. And I basically redo the whole tone mapping again. Sometimes I do that just because maybe I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm going to use a different tool and try to see if I come up with something better. I do the same thing with Lightroom, but usually most of the time it's just straight out of C4D and Redshift. When you want to be good at anything, sports, music, whatever, what you have to do, you have to practice. I'm doing 3D, I have it almost every day, some exceptions, but pretty much every day. And also personal projects are very important. It comes to, you always get directions what you have to do, which is great, but sometimes you just need an outlet, creative outlet, to do something differently, to do experiment. And also, when it comes to, this is, by the way, some old projects that I'm going to show you while I'm going to talk. When it comes to online, when you share something online, people generally like it more if it's your personal project and if it's not a client project. So it kind of makes sense. And also, if you have clients coming in, they're going to see the way you think. They're going to see the way you think about things. Also, in animations, I'm going to go back a bit. I like to do I have a scene, and I don't want to. Can't seem to play this from. All right, I'll play it again. So, also in animations, I like not to, for instance, you see static scenes, right? It makes a huge difference if it's a different, if you add detail to the, sorry again, I can't seem to play this through. So what I do is add details in the animation as well, so you don't, doesn't feel like it's static. And also what I'm doing here is I like to use a lot of custom textures in asset browsers in Cinema 4D. There are so many great, awesome objects, but what I like to do is to customize it. So change the material, change the object so it doesn't look exactly the same, because you want to stand out and make it a little bit different. And it all comes down to small details. The world is full of small details. We can never replicate everything you see around yourself. There's so many details, so we can try as long as we want, but we can't do it. So we have to find ways to replicate it, fake it, and do whatever. What I like to do is working on close-up shots, to focus on small little details. I was doing this like holiday cards for clients and so on. And what I realized, that usually what gives it away, again, if we go back to the beginning, it's glass. Every time I was working on, everything looked good, but the glass was not looking great. So always I try to focus on the glass, try to add these little details, try to add little fingerprints on it, and tweak it and tweak it. Once we get the glass right, everything else is going to fall into place. Same like here in this shot, this condensation thing. It took a while, but it was worth it. And not only the close-up shots, even when you go out and zoom out, every pixel counts. Every little small details counts. And it's little roughness, little scratches, and dirt maps, and so on. All right, so this is what I was going to say before. Same applies here. Try to, when I'm working on animation, try to animate something so it's not still. Here the car is going in behind. Here's another shot. Everything is static. Right, everything is static, nothing is moving, but I added a little bit of dust particles. I'm not sure if you can see that. Small dust particles, and they add a little bit of realism and feel like it's actually a room. And of course, like I said before, updates with the software, new software coming out, always be on the lookout. I'm like constantly and trying to learn new stuff. Been sculpting lately a lot. Also trying real-time rendering. There's a real cool connection between Cinema 4D Redshift and Unreal Engine 5. This is a scene you've seen before. It's you just click and you get materials inside of Unreal Engines with direct link sync. Really cool. So all this knowledge is basically comes in handy when working with clients. I work with Studio Humdinger from Minneapolis, Minnesota for like 9 years now. We do all kinds of projects, motion design, animation, 3D product rendering, and so on. A lot of stuff. Really great clients. We also do a lot of architectural visualizations, product visualization, and always focusing on the product, always finding new ways to show the product, make it really stand out, even in simple, very simple setups, minimalistic setups, showing all kinds of lighting. I'm going to show this setup here. First, I'm going to play the clip.
Of architectural acoustics lives within the walls of these patented layers, creating the world's quietest building blocks, perfectly tuned and precisely machined to absorb, block, and obliterate sound like no other, unlocking the creative freedom to blend in or to stand out in a nearly unlimited array of shapes, forms, and styles, sustainably sourced from the finest of woods, in an endless variety of finishes, and crafted to endure for generations.
So you see, it's a mixture between motion design and architectural visualization, which we do quite often. So usually, I would say big places, big rooms are harder to make look good and realistic. Also, if you make it like a night scene with a lot of artificial lighting, also makes it a lot more difficult. So for instance, just a skylight coming from inside the left side is already looking quite all right. But if you start with the night scene or evening scene, I always like to add a little bit of a blue light coming in from the side, and then I focus on different areas at a time. And while adding the lights, they also make the product or the render look better because you're adding details. So this image on the left is looking right, so good. Sorry. So moving on the right side, again, I'm basically showcasing the design of the whole room by adding more lights. Another lamp here, and light that lights the right area. Now, we have to light the whole room, but I focus on different parts first before I go for that, because there's another room here on the right. So once I turn on the huge light on the ceiling, it's not really making a huge difference to the parts on the left side because they're covered. And every time you make a light, you're thinking about what you're making to the whole image, what you're changing, and how much is it making a better image or not. Also, like behind the counter here, another light, top and left, right. So this is like the final image that was made, which at first becomes very difficult because whatever you do, everything is out of balance. But once you focus on different areas at a time, it starts falling into place. And here's another example that we really try to, the goal is to show the product in different environments. And for this case, we built the whole house and started moving the camera around, finding nice ways and nice transitions to make it work. And like going from one room to another, always the camera is the same position, the environment is changing, adding some Cinema 4D particles as well to break down the whole overall look. And this is the final zoom out and back to the product. So I really love doing stuff like that. And that was actually played on the NASDAQ Tower in Times Square, New York. Always cool to see projects like that on a stage like that. All right. So the whole scene is like, every room is filled with furniture, has lights, has a pool with lights coming out, has lights on the trees and everything, but Cinema 4D just renders it no problem, so I really enjoy using that. Okay, now I want to talk about something else. It's a project that I'm working on right now. I actually started working on it for this occasion, and I want to break it down a little bit. This is what it looks like. So I will talk about the exterior lighting, scattering of objects, and so on. And here's another look at it. I made a couple of test renders and so on from different angles, night versions. Let's just start at the beginning. I have a tree, and I want to make my workflow very efficient. So what I do is I make it a Redshift proxy, export it, and then import it in a new project, the project I'm going to be working on. And now I have an option to not see it at all, or maybe use it as if you want to see it, you can, but it's a very fast workflow. It works really fast. So next thing I do is I clone it onto the surface that I created here. I use a matrix object, I scatter it around, also use like a randomizer, and also using polygon selection. You can select the areas in multiple ways, but I use polygon selection. And if you look at the flow on my machine, you can like increase the size of the trees so much, and it still works really fast. I really enjoy that. And when you're ready and have that set up, you can just download the trees from the asset browser from Blauberg and scatter it as much as you want. For the floor itself, I used a high-quality 16K, I think, image of a scanned floor. And the Like you see, the texture is nothing special. It just has a displacement bump map and a roughness channel, and it works really good. But that's not good enough because that's going to look flat. So I add another layer of leaves, and those are scanned, and they're not flat. They have geometry to them, and when you scatter them, they look much better. And again, multiple ways you can scatter them around. I like to, the quickest way and the cheapest way, just select a couple of polygons and slam it onto it and look for the surfaces and start scattering them out. What I like to do, in this case, what I did was the surface, I put it beneath the water level, and kept it close to the water level. So you see the depth. You can see like there's leaves on the floor, on the ground, and there's leaves on the surface of the water, and that gives it like a lot of depth. Also, you can see there's some leaves on the roof. You can use the same scattering technique with the MoGraph as well, or you can just, here's an example, make the leaves a rigid body, and there we go. Simple as that. You can delete or add more leaves if you want to. There's multiple ways you can do that. I think moving them by hand is never a good idea. And all these tools are so easy to do, easy to use. And in this case, this is the dynamic place tool. If you move it to the surface, it attaches it to it. If you hold Shift and let it go, it connects to it. You have to play with the settings here, so they stick to the surface. And the more you scatter a lot of different stuff around the scene, the more realistic it's going to be, because, like I said, the details in the real world are incredibly, it's incredible how many details there are. So the more you do this, the more realistic it's going to become. So when it comes to lighting, always I start with different lighting setups. And this is like a cloudy HDR image. It looks all right, but I don't feel really the depth. So what I do, I add Redshift environment in the background, play around with the settings a bit. It doesn't look quite right still, so I play with the fog, and this looks much better. Still, I'm missing the details. So like I did in the interior shot, I want to paint with the light again. So I introduce sunlight, even though I don't want the sunny scene. So the sun is coming out through the trees and adding those details inside. And what I like to do is I decrease the sun size, so the sun disk scale, so it's more sharp. So the bigger the light source is, the softer the shadows, the smaller the light source is, the sharper the shadows. In this case, I want the sharp shadows to really add those little small details inside. And you can see it's not a huge difference, but it still adds those details that I really like to see. And it works for me better. And again, once I have a scene set up like this, I just go and start throwing in all kinds of HDRs to see what sticks, what doesn't. Some images, sometimes some HDRs, you think they won't work, you just throw them in and it replaces them. The rendering is fast, so you're trying different light setups without any thinking ahead, and sometimes you come up with something really cool. So this is the setup for the night scene. The fire here is basically a texture with an alpha channel, so it's an incandescent light, and add some area lights inside, add some lights outside as well. And the thing about lighting exteriors and interiors is when you place a light, it casts a nice shadow light on the house, but if I want some more light on the whole surface, and if I increase it, it's going to overblow everything. So what I do is just add fake lights. More lights similar to those, move them out and hide them from the camera. Same for the fireplace, make it warm above the fire and light it up. So always faking this kind of scenery. Also, when you have like a exterior shot, I also like to add additional light that's casting outside of the windows, so it casts more light outside. That's like something that doesn't feel right because our eyes adjust differently than the cameras. It's a complex process, but faking it makes it look much better. Here's another version of the night scene, just reduced the skylight. Here's another shot. So what I like in photography and in renders as well, so you can feel really the depth of the image. So this goes really far in the back. And here's a version of the night scene, again with the lights and the fog in the behind. So multiple layers, like here's one island, second one, and the one in the back. And in reality, this scene is ridiculously simple. I basically made one island, and it scattered it with trees, rocks, grass, leaves, and just copy and pasted it, and randomized it a bit so it looks different, and copy it again, and you can have like a complex-looking scene with almost like no effort. And the trees in the background are scattered onto a plane, and I increased the number of scattered trees, which still works ridiculously fast. What I try to do is always think about not having things in the scene that I cannot see or things that are not reflecting. So I just delete them. Or like for instance, the back of the hill in this case, it's just I cut it off with the polygons really roughly, as you can see. I could also do like a polygon selection and make that and keep the hill, but always focused on what's in front of the camera. Also, this workflow, we just get new trees and throw them inside, and you have a different looking render. For the interior, I just placed like a dining table or something like that. The lighting for this as well is super simple. And in shots like this, I love the fact that I have a 3D geometry in the background. I don't have to place an image. I don't have to find images that go into the background because that does not look realistic, especially if you're animating that. It's way better when you have a real geometry, and then the depth of field works much better. And in this case, this is an HDR that I used before. So again, it's very dark. I start very dark, very cold, and then start adding lights. So you can see the difference between this and that. It's like, for me, it makes a whole lot of difference, but it makes 0 sense because this is what I did. So this is absolutely, it makes absolutely no sense. Why would like area light like that be in the corner? But you know what? Who cares? It makes those little details on the chair, on the plant, everywhere. It just looks so much better. And never, like I said in the beginning, it's okay to know, you have to know the rules about lighting, about how everything works, but it's really awesome to break those rules and do whatever you want as long as it looks right, okay? So that, like, yeah, that's no way. There's no such thing in the real world. Again, adding an additional light here. Small little details, small little shapes in the shadows, and so on. Also played around with a wider shot. Once you have like a project like that, personal project, you just start exploring things, and you can go and make something completely different. Like I was playing here with the low fog settings. And while I was working on this, it reminded me of something. All right, this is really rough. That was a last-minute idea, but I'm sure you heard of the movie. I love the movie. I love John Carpenter's movies. I love old-school horror metal music, punk rock music, and so on. And the thing is, the more you work on the projects, the more ideas you get. It's always going to be something new. And the more you do it, the better the project is going to be. And what I love about Cinema 4D is, like, I have this idea like this, and oh, I want to make a fog, like creeping, crawling fog inside. How do I do that? So, look at how simple the setup here is. So I just use the pyro object, works really fast. Here's basically the setup. So the pyro object on the sphere, then I have like a destructor in the background, so it kills the particles in the background, so it doesn't consume too much memory. Then we have colliders. Everything is the fog is bouncing off of all the objects. And some settings in the pyro, nothing too special. Some turbulence and reducing the gravity and so on, and it works. Also, while scrolling around the Cinema 4D content browser, there's a fire there. So I just drag and drop it, you have a 3D fire. Simple as that. So working on, it's always for me when I'm working on projects like this, like projects that I don't really have time to do, but I do them anyway, always look for ways to, creative ways to do things that look complicated maybe, and use different simple tools that Cinema 4D offers to help you with the project. So to round things up, the realism itself, again, is subjective. The most important thing is that you keep looking for the details in the real world and learning not only the tools, but also real-life photography and so on, and practice everything basically on a daily basis. I talk about some of that stuff on my Patreon. If you have questions, I'm on all social media, also with Humdinger. We're always looking for cool new projects. Reach us out. It was really awesome to be here. Stuttgart is eine sehr schöne Stadt. So really grateful to be here. I want to thank Maxon for the invitation, and you have a chance to register and win a prize, so you can scan this texture. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? You do? Okay. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I was wondering, when you're working on product visualization, how do you balance the realism of adding details that on the materials, like fingerprints or like scratches, without like damaging the image and without making it less desirable?
Well, that's a good question. A few years ago, I would say everybody wanted perfect images, like everything clean, sharp. But lately, we have been getting requests like, make it comfortable, make it cozy, make it like somebody lives in there, make it somebody's using it. Not to the extent like it's damaged, but a little bit of details that add to the feeling like it's not in a hospital or whatever, crispy clean. So small little imperfections are something that clients are starting to ask for. Yeah, very good question. Yeah, because it used to be like even the reflections had to be perfect with no whatsoever, no surface, and then it's even harder to make it realistic because it's too clean. You don't ever see. The thing is that we only understand what we see. So you see certain things, and then you see a render, something is off. This is too clean. There's no way that can be that clean. So that's like making it this perfectly clean render is impossible to make it perfectly clean and realistic. So a little bit of imperfections always helps. Sometimes even the clients don't realize there's imperfections there. All right, any more questions? Yep.
Hi. Do you use any textures on your aerial to add more realism? Or do you think that use textures on the aerial can add more realism, like the textures provided by GSG packs, the grayscale guerrilla pack?
Yeah. If the question is if I like to add textures,
yeah,
like
use textures on the aerial
oh yeah, sure,
can add
absolutely,
realism.
absolutely.
Okay.
I actually use a lot of online content because, like you probably heard before, there's always time restrictions, some deadlines, and you just don't have time to do everything on your own. The only thing that I like to do is, like I said before, is I like to edit them, modify something to make it a little different. Like GSG, like you said, download the texture and play around with the setting a bit, and it's good to go. So yeah, everybody uses that, actually. Nobody goes every time from scratch unless you're like working on a personal project and have a ton of time for it. So always use assets to your advantage so you're faster in your workflow. Thanks. Any more questions? Okay. Okay.
How'd you do the dust?
The
Animation? The dust that was like in the air? Or was I just seeing that?
oh yeah, that was particles. Yeah, I know what you're saying. That was particles in Cinema 4D, and also I faked it a little bit. I added some film footage to add some additional small little particles. So mixture between particle emitter with some turbulence and additional light footage that was filmed on the black behind, so you can matte it in After Effects in post. So that was a bit of a cheat.
So it was a separate render?
Yeah, 2 separate renders, yeah. And also I like to do is, when I'm rendering particles, I like to render them in separate render on the black background, and then composite it again, so you have more control with which areas you want to do. You just mask different areas, because if you render everything out from the first, you lose control and you can't really manipulate all these details. Thanks for the question. Yes?
Could you maybe go one slide back so I see it again? Yes.
Which one?
With the intro? Yes.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay.
There's a shot in your it's a speaker, I think, the product that it resembled like fluid. That was made with C4D, or is something else?
The fluids.
Yeah, it's like a short shot that you have in the speaker video.
Okay. No, I don't think so. It was the camera was moving, so everything looked like it was a fluid, but there was like a small bump animation. So it's a Maxon noise animated slightly, so it moves, and that's it.
But if you're asking, fluids is coming out with Cinema 4D soon.
Yes,
I heard about that.
that's a great new feature. More questions? Karan, we're done? Okay. Oh, there's one question. The last second. Could you please use the microphone?
Sorry, have you ever worked in an architecture firm before when like doing architectural visualization?
No, actually, I'm an economist. I studied economics. I worked as a accountant, and I learned pretty much everything on my own. And I got into architecture because of pretty much of the realism, because most of the realistic stuff was happening in the archivist world. So I had to learn a lot about architecture, about figuring out the floor plans and everything, different. There's a lot of stuff that I had to learn.
Yeah,
like I said in the beginning, it
learn?
branches out very quickly, and it takes really a lot of time to learn everything. But you know, what can you do?
So like what extent do you have to learn about like architecture to be able to like be an architectural like visualization artist?
So the first projects I was working on, that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad experience for my clients as well, I think. But I got feedback from them. I started working on new projects. You got some feedback from them. You just keep learning and keep learning on every project you can. I even had a lot of conversation with architects so I can understand the floor plans and all the details that need to be done, all the architectural styles. That takes a while, but you go step by step. And usually the clients see what you're working on. So we have like an entry level or basic. So you get this kind of clients, but once you get better, you're going to attract more bigger clients. And once you get really good at it, you're going to attract huge clients. But then at that point, you'll already know what you're doing. So it's a slow process, but I can't give you like an answer that works like one-click solution. There's like no such thing, like in everything. So I always think it's very good to keep trying and keep looking for other things that help you do whatever you do in your life, because everything is connected in some way.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Oh, that's it. Thank you.